When Ethan Carter's fiancée vanishes without a trace, he embarks on a relentless quest for answers, only to uncover a sinister conspiracy that reaches far beyond her disappearance. As lines blur between justice and vengeance, trust and betrayal, one question haunts him. How far is he willing to go to bring her back, and at what cost? Hey, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. It's amazing to connect with all of you. Don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories every day. Seattle was not just a city, it was an atmosphere. Perpetually shrouded in rain and mist, its streets glistened under dim streetlights, reflecting the somber mood of those who called it home. For Ethan Carter, this dreary backdrop mirrored his inner turmoil perfectly. At 32, Ethan had achieved what many would consider success. A stable job as a software engineer, a modest apartment overlooking Puget Sound, and the admiration of colleagues who saw him as diligent and dependable. But beneath that polished exterior lay a man burdened by guilt so heavy it felt like chains around his soul. 2 years ago, everything changed. His fiancée, Sophia Bennett, vanished without a trace during a weekend getaway to the Cascade Mountains. The police labeled her case missing, presumed dead, but Ethan refused to accept such finality. To him, Sophia wasn't gone. She was out there somewhere, waiting for him to find her. Every day since her disappearance had been consumed by relentless searching, sleepless nights, and haunting memories. He replayed their last conversation over and over in his mind, dissecting every word, every pause, convinced he'd missed something crucial. His apartment told the story of his obsession. Stacks of old newspapers cluttered the coffee table, each article meticulously highlighted where it mentioned missing persons or unsolved cases. A corkboard on one wall displayed photos of Sophia, timelines, maps, and red strings connecting dots only Ethan could see. By the window, a framed picture of them together sat untouched, gathering dust, a shrine to happier times. Outside, the sound of waves crashing against the shore echoed through the room, a constant reminder of how life moved forward even when you didn't want it to. Ethan's friends had drifted away, unable to bear his single-minded fixation. Promotions at work passed him by because he couldn't focus on anything else. Yet none of that mattered. All that mattered was finding Sophia, or at least uncovering the truth about what happened to her. In Seattle's eternal grayness, Ethan existed in limbo, suspended between hope and despair, clinging to the belief that answers were within reach if he just kept digging. The memory of Sophia's disappearance haunted Ethan like a ghost refusing to leave. It began innocently enough, a romantic weekend escape to a secluded cabin nestled deep in the Cascade Mountains. They'd planned it for months, eager to escape the chaos of city life and reconnect amidst nature's tranquility. But fate intervened before they could even start. On the morning of their trip, Ethan received an urgent call from his boss demanding he stay late to fix a critical bug in the company's software. Reluctantly, he canceled, assuring Sophia she should go ahead without him. She agreed, though her voice on the phone carried an unusual edge, hesitant, almost fearful. At the time, Ethan chalked it up to disappointment, but now, replaying that moment endlessly, he wondered if there was more to it. Had she known something? Feared something? When Sophia failed to return after 2 days, Ethan panicked. Calls went unanswered, texts remained unread. Panic turned to dread when he arrived at the cabin to find it eerily empty. No signs of struggle marred the pristine interior. Her belongings were neatly packed, untouched. The car sat parked outside, keys dangling from the ignition. It was as if she'd simply vanished into thin air. The police investigation yielded nothing concrete. No footprints leading away from the cabin. No witnesses. No evidence of foul play. After weeks of fruitless searching, they closed the case, leaving Ethan adrift in a sea of unanswered questions. What truly gnawed at him was the nagging feeling that Sophia hadn't disappeared randomly. Something, or someone, had taken her. And whatever it was, it started long before that fateful weekend. For Ethan, moving on wasn't an option. Each night, he sat hunched over his laptop, scouring online forums dedicated to cold cases. He joined communities filled with others desperate for closure, trading theories and tips late into the night. Some dismissed him as obsessive, but Ethan didn't care. Every lead, no matter how small, fueled his determination. He hired private investigators, pouring thousands of dollars into searches that led nowhere. One PI claimed to have found a witness who saw Sophia boarding a bus headed toward Seattle, but the trail went cold. Another suggested she might have fallen victim to human traffickers operating in rural areas. Each dead end left Ethan more frustrated and more convinced that someone was hiding the truth. At work, his performance suffered. Deadlines slipped. Colleagues whispered behind his back, calling him unreliable. Friends stopped inviting him to social gatherings, tired of hearing about Sophia. Even family grew distant, urging him to let go and move on. But letting go meant accepting defeat, and Ethan couldn't do that. Not yet. In the quiet hours of the night, he stared at old photos of Sophia, tracing her smile with trembling fingers. Memories flooded back, their laughter echoing through crowded restaurants, lazy Sunday mornings spent tangled in blankets, whispered promises of forever. Those moments played on repeat in his mind, taunting him with what he'd lost. If only he hadn't canceled that trip. If only he'd insisted on going with her. Guilt clawed at him, relentless and unforgiving. If Ethan's world revolved around loss, then Victor Langston's revolved around power. A towering figure in Seattle's elite circles, Victor was a man who commanded attention wherever he went. With sharp suits tailored to perfection and a smile that never quite reached his eyes, he exuded confidence and control. As a real estate tycoon, he owned properties stretching across the Pacific Northwest, amassing wealth beyond measure. But beneath the polished veneer lay a darker truth. Rumors swirled about Victor's involvement in illegal activities, land grabs, bribery, even whispers of human trafficking. Despite these allegations, nothing stuck. His connections ran deep, shielding him from scrutiny. Law enforcement turned a blind eye, politicians bowed to his influence, and journalists feared retaliation. Yet Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that Victor's empire hid secrets worth uncovering. It started subtly, a name mentioned in passing during one of his late-night research sessions. A forum user speculated that Victor had purchased vast tracts of land near the Cascade Mountains shortly before Sophia's disappearance. Coincidence? Maybe. But Ethan's instincts screamed otherwise. Why would a billionaire invest in remote, undeveloped areas unless there was something valuable hidden there? Or worse, something sinister? As Ethan delved deeper, piecing together fragments of information, Victor's shadow loomed larger. Could the man responsible for Sophia's disappearance be someone so untouchable? The thought terrified Ethan, but also ignited a spark of resolve. If Victor held the key to finding Sophia, Ethan would stop at nothing to bring him down. It was a rainy evening, the kind Seattle was infamous for, gray skies pressing down like a heavy lid, raindrops tapping insistently against Ethan's apartment windows. He sat slumped at his desk, staring blankly at his laptop screen. Another dead end in his endless search for Sophia. Frustration simmered beneath his skin as he scrolled through yet another forum post filled with vague theories and baseless speculation. Just as he was about to shut down his computer, an email notification popped up. The subject line read simply, "Look closer." His heart skipped a beat. It wasn't unusual for him to receive anonymous tips. Most were useless, but something about this one felt different. With trembling hands, he clicked it open. Attached was a grainy photograph. At first glance, it seemed unremarkable, a figure standing near what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse downtown. But then Ethan froze. Squinting at the image, he realized the person looked eerily familiar. Long hair cascading over her shoulders, a scarf wrapped loosely around her neck, it was unmistakably Sophia. His breath hitched. She looked thinner, paler, but alive. Alive. Below the photo, a cryptic caption read, "She's closer than you think." Ethan's mind raced. Sent this? And why now? Was it someone trying to help, or manipulate him? The questions swirled faster than the storm outside, but one thing was clear. This was the first tangible lead he'd had in 2 years. Hope surged within him, sharp and painful, cutting through the fog of despair that had clouded his life for so long. He zoomed in on the background of the photo, searching for clues. Behind Sophia stood a building partially obscured by scaffolding, its faded sign reading, Langston Holdings. Ethan's blood ran cold. Could this be connected to Victor Langston? If so, what did it mean? Had Sophia been taken by Victor himself? Or was she being held somewhere under his control? The email ended abruptly, no sender information included. No way to trace it back. For hours, Ethan stared at the screen, replaying every detail in his head. Whoever sent this knew something, and they wanted him to find out more. This wasn't just hope, it was a challenge. A dare. And Ethan couldn't ignore it. The next morning, Ethan found himself sitting in a dingy cafe across from Pike Place Market, nursing a cup of coffee gone lukewarm. Sleep had eluded him all night, his mind consumed by the mysterious email and the implications of Victor Langston's involvement. As he absent-mindedly flipped through notes on his phone, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "You're Ethan Carter, right?" Startled, Ethan looked up to see a woman in her early 30s sliding into the seat opposite him. Her dark curls framed a face marked by intelligence and determination. She wore a leather jacket over a simple blouse, her posture confident but not aggressive. In her hand, she held a notepad scribbled with hurried handwriting. "I'm Claire Harper," she said, extending her hand. "I write for the Seattle Tribune. I've been following your story." Ethan hesitated before shaking her hand. Reporters usually meant trouble. They sensationalized tragedies, twisting facts to fit headlines. But there was something genuine about Claire's demeanor, a quiet intensity that suggested she wasn't here for clicks or views. "What do you want?" he asked cautiously. "To help," she replied without hesitation. "I've been investigating Victor Langston for months. Rumors about his illegal dealings have always intrigued me, but I haven't been able to pin anything concrete on him. When I heard about your fiancé's disappearance and saw the connection to those remote properties he owns, well, let's just say our paths might intersect." Ethan studied her carefully. Could he trust her? On one hand, she could be exactly what he needed, an ally with resources and expertise. On the other, she might complicate things further. Still, desperation outweighed caution. He nodded slowly. "But if we're doing this, we play by my rules." Claire smiled faintly, pulling out her notebook. "Fair enough. Let's start unraveling this mess together." With Claire's help, Ethan began digging deeper into Victor Langston's empire. They spent hours poring over property records, financial statements, and news articles. What they uncovered painted a disturbing picture. Over the past 5 years, Victor had purchased dozens of acres of land in remote areas, not just near the Cascade Mountains but also scattered throughout Washington state. Most of these parcels were undeveloped, seemingly worthless unless you considered their potential use for illicit activities. One particular transaction caught their attention, a sprawling plot adjacent to the cabin where Sophia had disappeared. According to public records, Victor acquired it shortly after her vanishing, paying far above market value. Why would a billionaire waste millions on such isolated terrain unless it served a specific purpose? As they pieced together the puzzle, Ethan grew increasingly convinced that Victor was involved in Sophia's disappearance. But how? And what? Theories swirled in his mind: blackmail, coercion, even human trafficking. Each possibility was darker than the last. Claire shared his suspicions but urged caution. "We need proof," she reminded him. "Speculation won't bring Sophia back. We have to connect the dots carefully, or we risk tipping off Langston." Despite her warnings, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Every moment wasted meant Sophia might slip further away. Late one night, while reviewing old surveillance footage from nearby towns, he spotted something chilling: a black SUV parked near the cabin on the day Sophia vanished. Its license plate matched a vehicle registered to one of Victor's shell companies. "This is it," Ethan whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and excitement. "This is the link we've been looking for." But as much as the discovery fueled his resolve, it also deepened his paranoia. If Victor truly was behind Sophia's disappearance, then exposing him wouldn't come without consequences. And Ethan couldn't shake the nagging thought that they weren't the only ones watching. On a whim, Ethan decided to visit Sophia's favorite cafe, a quaint little spot tucked away in Capitol Hill. It had closed months ago, its once vibrant interior now dark and dusty. Standing outside, he hesitated, unsure why he'd come. Maybe he hoped to feel closer to her, to recapture fragments of the life they'd shared. Or maybe he was simply grasping at straws, desperate for any connection to her. Inside, the air smelled stale, the furniture covered in sheets like ghosts frozen mid-step. Sunlight filtered weakly through grimy windows, casting eerie shadows across the floor. Ethan wandered aimlessly, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Then, near the counter, he noticed something odd, a loose floorboard slightly raised, as if someone had tampered with it recently. Kneeling down, he pried it open with trembling fingers. Beneath lay an old Polaroid photograph. His breath caught as he recognized the image instantly. It was of him and Sophia, smiling brightly during happier times. On the back, written in Sophia's elegant handwriting, were 3 words that sent chills coursing through his body. Trust no one. Ethan stared at the note, his mind reeling. Was Sophia trying to warn him? About whom? Victor? Someone else entirely? The message gnawed at him, planting seeds of doubt about everyone around him, including Claire. Could she be playing him? Using him to expose Victor while hiding her own agenda? That night, sleep evaded him completely. The weight of Sophia's warning pressed heavily on his chest, mingling with guilt, anger, and fear. Trust no one. Those 3 words echoed endlessly in his mind, a haunting reminder that the truth might be far more dangerous than he imagined. Claire had always been meticulous, a trait that made her an exceptional investigative journalist. Late one night, as Ethan paced nervously in her cramped apartment, she finally struck gold. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, decrypting files she'd obtained from a whistleblower within Victor Langston's organization. The documents she uncovered were chilling, private investigator reports detailing Sophia Bennett's every move in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Ethan leaned over Claire's shoulder, his breath catching as he scanned the pages. There were logs of Sophia's daily routines, where she went, whom she met, even snippets of conversations she'd had. One entry stood out. Subject met with unidentified male at Pike Place Market. Conversation revolved around exposing illegal activities tied to Victor Langston. Beneath it was a note. Target appears aware of sensitive information. Further monitoring required. This confirms it, Ethan whispered hoarsely, sinking into a chair. She wasn't just some random victim. She was being watched, targeted. Claire nodded grimly. Whoever this unidentified male is, they might hold the key to everything. If Sophia was gathering evidence against Victor, then her disappearance wasn't an accident, it was deliberate. The revelation hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. All this time, he'd clung to the hope that Sophia's vanishing was a tragic misunderstanding. But now, faced with undeniable proof of premeditation, his guilt and anger surged anew. He clenched his fists, knuckles white. We need to find him, the man she met. Whoever he is, he knows what happened to her. Claire placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We will. But we have to be careful. If Victor went to such lengths to silence Sophia, he won't hesitate to do the same to us. As the rain lashed against the windows outside, Ethan felt the weight of their mission pressing down on him. They weren't just searching for answers anymore. They were stepping into a deadly game where trust was a luxury neither could afford. The next day, Ethan decided to take matters into his own hands. Armed with Claire's intel, he began tailing Victor's movements, hoping to catch a glimpse of something, anything, that might lead them closer to Sophia. It was reckless, but desperation clouded his judgment. He parked his car several blocks away from Victor's high-rise office building, binoculars in hand, watching as sleek black SUVs pulled up and suited men escorted Victor inside. Hours passed without incident. Just as Ethan started to think his stakeout was futile, a shadow moved in his rearview mirror. Before he could react, headlights blinded him, and a massive truck rammed into the side of his car. Metal screeched, glass shattered, and Ethan's world spun violently as his vehicle careened off the road and onto the shoulder. Dazed but alive, Ethan struggled to unbuckle his seatbelt. Through the cracked windshield, he saw 2 men step out of the truck, their faces obscured by hoods. Panic surged through him as they approached, pulling crowbars from their jackets. This wasn't just intimidation, it was an assassination attempt. Just as one of the men reached for Ethan's door handle, Tires squealed behind them. Claire skidded to a halt in her beat-up sedan, jumping out with a baseball bat in hand. "Leave him alone," she shouted, swinging wildly at the attackers. Startled, the men hesitated long enough for Ethan to scramble out of the wreckage. Together, he and Claire fought back, driving the assailants into retreat. Breathing heavily, Ethan collapsed against the hood of Claire's car. "How did you know?" he asked between gasps. "I followed you," she admitted. "I knew you'd try something stupid. Looks like I was right." Despite the adrenaline coursing through him, Ethan couldn't help but feel a flicker of gratitude and fear. If Victor's men were willing to kill him, then they were playing a far more dangerous game than either of them had anticipated. Back at Claire's apartment, they regrouped, shaken but determined. Claire pored over the documents again, piecing together fragments of Victor's operation. She stumbled upon something intriguing, a blueprint of Victor's mansion. Hidden beneath layers of architectural jargon was a reference to a secure vault located deep underground. What if Sophia found this? Claire mused aloud, tapping the blueprint. If she discovered incriminating evidence in there, records of his crimes, maybe even names of victims, it would explain why she disappeared. Ethan frowned. But how would she even get close to something like that? Victor doesn't strike me as someone who lets people wander freely in his house. "Maybe she didn't plan to," Claire replied. "Remember the PI reports? They mentioned she was investigating Victor's illegal land deals. What if those deals led her straight to his doorstep?" The idea sent shivers down Ethan's spine. If Sophia had uncovered Victor's darkest secrets, then her fate was sealed the moment she set foot near that vault. But where was she now? And what had Victor done with the evidence? "We need to find that vault," Ethan said firmly. "It's our best shot at finding her." Claire nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. Breaking into Victor's mansion wouldn't be easy, not with his army of guards and state-of-the-art security systems. Still, they had no choice. The truth lay buried within those walls, waiting to be unearthed. That night, Ethan sifted through old belongings Sophia had left behind, searching for anything that might shed light on her investigation. Among the items was a small leather-bound journal she used to jot down thoughts and ideas. Flipping through its pages, he found entries detailing her growing suspicions about Victor. One passage stood out: "Met Daniel today. He claims to have proof of Victor's involvement in human trafficking. Said he'll share it with me soon. If this is real, we can finally expose him. But I'm scared. Every step feels like walking into a trap." Ethan's heart sank. Daniel Hayes, the whistleblower. Could he still be alive? Had he vanished alongside Sophia? Or worse, had Victor silenced him too? A flashback unfolded in Ethan's mind, vivid and painful. He remembered Sophia mentioning Daniel once during dinner, though she'd been vague, saying only that he was helping her with a project. At the time, Ethan hadn't pressed her for details. Now he wished he had. "Whoever Daniel is," Claire said softly, reading over his shoulder, "he's crucial to this story. If we can find him, or what he left behind, we might finally understand what happened to Sophia." Ethan nodded, resolve hardening in his chest. For the first time, he felt like they were closing in on answers. But with each new clue came fresh dangers, and the stakes grew higher with every passing moment. The next morning, Ethan and Claire sat huddled over Sophia's journal, poring over its pages for any additional clues. Near the back, they discovered a series of numbers and symbols scrawled hastily, a code that seemed out of place among her otherwise neat handwriting. Claire immediately recognized it as a cipher, likely used to conceal sensitive information. After hours of decoding, they cracked it. The message read, "Tacoma Warehouse B7. Midnight." Beneath it was a crude sketch of a building with an X marked near the loading dock. "This has to be it," Ethan said, his voice trembling with anticipation. Whatever Sophia found, she hid it here. That night, armed with flashlights and determination, they broke into the abandoned warehouse in Tacoma. Dust hung thick in the air, and the scent of mildew filled their nostrils as they navigated through piles of rusted machinery and broken crates. Following the map, they reached a locked office door. Inside, they found an old surveillance system still partially operational. Claire fiddled with the controls until grainy footage flickered onto the monitor. It showed Sophia walking alone toward the warehouse late one evening. Suddenly, two men emerged from the shadows, grabbing her roughly. She struggled, shouting something indistinct before being dragged into a black van. The screen went dark moments later. Ethan stared at the frozen image, his chest tightening. "This is real," he whispered. She didn't just vanish, she was taken. But the footage raised more questions than answers. Who were those men? Where had they taken her? And why hadn't anyone seen or reported this before? "We're close," Claire assured him, though uncertainty lingered in her tone. Whoever filmed this knew what they were doing. Someone wanted us to see this, but why? As they left the warehouse, a figure stepped out of the shadows, startling them both. He was tall and lean, with grizzled features and piercing blue eyes. His clothes were worn, his beard unkempt, but there was a sharpness to his gaze that suggested intelligence and danger. "I've been watching you," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "You're digging where you shouldn't." Ethan instinctively stepped forward, ready to defend himself, but Claire held him back. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Name's Marcus Kane," he replied. "Ex-cop. Used to work for Victor Langston until I saw too much. Now I live off the grid, trying to stay alive." Marcus explained how he'd once been part of Victor's security team, tasked with covering up his crimes. When Marcus refused to comply with an order to eliminate a key witness, Victor turned on him, framing him for embezzlement and forcing him into hiding. Since then, he'd spent years gathering intel on Victor's operations, hoping to bring him down. "If you want to find your girl," Marcus told Ethan, "you'll need my help. But know this, I don't do charity. You protect me, I protect you." Though wary of his motives, Ethan and Claire agreed. They couldn't afford to turn away potential allies, not when every lead brought them closer to uncovering the truth. With Marcus on board, the trio began planning their next move. However, Marcus wasted no time warning them about the risks. "Victor's got eyes everywhere," he said grimly. "Cops, politicians, even some reporters, they're all on his payroll. Trust no one, not even each other." His words planted seeds of doubt in Ethan's mind. Could Claire truly be trusted? What if Marcus had ulterior motives? Paranoia gnawed at him as they delved deeper into Victor's world, piecing together fragments of evidence while constantly looking over their shoulders. One evening, while reviewing surveillance photos Marcus had provided, Ethan noticed something unsettling, a familiar face lurking in the background of several shots. It was Claire, captured unknowingly during their stakeouts. Had she tipped someone off? Or was this merely coincidence? When confronted, Claire denied any wrongdoing, insisting the photos must have been planted to sow discord. Yet Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being played. Every alley felt darker, every shadow longer. The pressure mounted, threatening to fracture their fragile alliance. Just as tensions reached a boiling point, Ethan received another anonymous email. This time, the message was brief but chilling. "If you want answers, come alone. Bring anyone and she dies." Attached were GPS coordinates leading to a remote island off the Washington coast. Ethan's hands trembled as he read the message aloud to Claire and Marcus. Both urged him not to go, fearing it was a trap designed to isolate and eliminate him. But Ethan's desperation outweighed reason. "I can't ignore this," he insisted. "What if it's Sophia? What if she's still alive?" Claire argued fiercely, reminding him of the dangers. "Victor doesn't play fair. If you walk into this blind, you're signing your own death warrant." Marcus chimed in, his tone grim. "She's right. Whoever sent this knows exactly how to push your buttons. Don't let them win." Despite their pleas, Ethan made up his mind. Under cover of darkness, he boarded a ferry bound for the island, leaving Claire and Marcus behind. As the mainland faded into the distance, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into a nightmare, one from which there might be no escape. The ferry ride to the remote island was long and silent, save for the rhythmic slap of waves against the hull. Ethan stood at the railing, clutching the crumpled email in his pocket as the mainland faded behind him. His mind raced with possibilities. Hope that Sophia might still be alive, fear that this was a trap, and guilt over leaving Claire and Marcus behind. Yet he couldn't turn back now. Every fiber of his being told him that this journey held answers. When the ferry docked, Ethan stepped onto the desolate shore. The island was eerily quiet, its landscape dominated by jagged cliffs and dense forests shrouded in mist. A narrow path led uphill toward a crumbling lighthouse perched precariously on the edge of a cliff. Its silhouette loomed against the gray sky, windows shattered like hollow eyes staring into nothingness. As Ethan approached, the sound of crashing waves grew louder, drowning out all other noise. He hesitated before stepping inside, the creak of the rotting door echoing through the empty halls. Dust motes floated lazily in shafts of dim light streaming through broken windows. The air smelled of saltwater and decay. Faint whispers seemed to drift through the corridors, indistinct but unnerving. Was it the wind? Or something else? Ethan shook off the chill creeping up his spine and pressed forward. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the weight of the island itself bore down on him. This place wasn't just abandoned, it was haunted, not by ghosts but by secrets buried deep within its walls. And somewhere here, he hoped, lay the truth about Sophia. Inside the lighthouse, Ethan found a small room that appeared to have once served as an office. A dusty wooden table stood in the center, covered in debris from years of neglect. But amidst the chaos, something gleamed faintly, a silver locket lying atop a pile of papers. His breath caught as he picked it up. It was unmistakably Sophia's, engraved with her initials on the back. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were two faded photographs, one of him and Sophia smiling together, the other of her alone, gazing wistfully into the distance. Tears welled in his eyes as memories flooded back. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine her standing beside him, holding his hand. Then reality crashed down again. Nearby, he noticed a small recording device partially hidden under some rubble. Heart pounding, he pressed play. Static crackled briefly before Sophia's voice filled the room, trembling and desperate. "Please, someone has to hear me," she pleaded. Her words were muffled by sobs, but one sentence cut through clearly, "Victor knows everything." Ethan froze, his blood running cold. Before he could process what she meant, the recording ended abruptly with muffled screams that sent chills coursing through his body. The tape clicked off, plunging the room into silence once more. For several minutes, Ethan sat motionless, clutching the locket tightly. His mind reeled with questions. What did Victor know? Why had Sophia been so terrified? And most importantly, was she still alive? The discovery reignited his determination but also left him devastated, grappling with the realization that Sophia had suffered unimaginably. Just as Ethan prepared to leave the lighthouse, a sudden noise startled him. Turning sharply, he saw Marcus Kane emerge from the shadows, his expression unreadable. "You shouldn't have come alone," Marcus said, his tone devoid of the camaraderie they'd shared earlier. "What are you doing here?" Ethan demanded, suspicion rising. Marcus smirked darkly. "I've been working for Victor this whole time. Did you really think I'd turn against him? He pays better than revenge ever could." Before Ethan could react, Marcus lunged, delivering a swift blow to his temple. Darkness swallowed him whole. When Ethan woke hours later, groggy and disoriented, he realized he'd been left stranded on the island. His phone was gone, along with any means of contacting Claire or escaping quickly. Panic surged as he pieced together Marcus's betrayal. Not only had he abandoned Ethan, but he'd also kidnapped Claire, intending to use her as leverage. Ethan clenched his fists, rage bubbling beneath his grief. Marcus had played them all, feeding false information while secretly aiding Victor. Now, both Claire and Sophia's fates rested squarely on Ethan's shoulders. There was no time for despair. He needed to act. Ethan woke with a throbbing headache, the cold dampness of the lighthouse floor seeping through his clothes. His vision blurred as he struggled to sit up, every movement sending sharp pains shooting through his skull. The betrayal by Marcus burned hotter than the physical ache. Marcus had played them all, feeding false hope while secretly working for Victor. And now, Claire was in danger too. The room spun as Ethan forced himself to stand, steadying himself against the crumbling wall. He patted his pockets, searching for his phone or any means of communication, but found nothing. Marcus had taken everything, leaving him stranded on this godforsaken island. Panic clawed at his chest, but he pushed it down. Panicking wouldn't save Claire or Sophia. Action would. Outside, the wind howled, whipping waves into frothy chaos against the rocky shore. Ethan scanned the beach, spotting driftwood scattered across the sand. His mind raced as he formulated a plan. If he could build a makeshift raft, he might be able to paddle back to the mainland. It was risky, but staying here wasn't an option. 4 hours, Ethan worked tirelessly, dragging logs and tying them together with scraps of rope salvaged from the debris. His hands bled from splinters and rough handling, but he barely noticed. Each knot tied brought him closer to escaping this nightmare. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the island in shadow, his crude raft was ready. Pushing it into the water, Ethan hesitated for a moment, staring out at the vast expanse of black ocean. The journey ahead was perilous, but failure wasn't an option. Taking a deep breath, he climbed aboard and began paddling furiously, using a broken oar he'd scavenged. The current fought against him, pulling him sideways, but he gritted his teeth and kept going. Waves crashed over the edges of the raft, soaking him to the bone, but he refused to stop. Hours passed in a haze of exhaustion and determination. At some point, his arms felt like lead weights, and his body screamed for rest, but the thought of Claire and Sophia kept him moving. Finally, just as dawn broke, the outline of the mainland appeared on the horizon. Relief washed over him, though it was short-lived. He still had no idea where Marcus had taken Claire, and time was running out. Dragging himself ashore, Ethan collapsed onto the wet sand, gasping for air. His body ached, his mind was foggy, but one thing was clear: Victor Langston would pay for what he'd done. Ethan vowed to dismantle his empire piece by piece, no matter the cost. 2 days later, Ethan stood outside Victor Langston's opulent mansion, disguised as a waiter serving champagne at a high-profile gala. The event buzzed with Seattle's elite, politicians, business tycoons, and socialites mingling under glittering chandeliers. Laughter echoed through marble halls, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. Ethan moved among the crowd, keeping his head low and his movements deliberate. Every step brought him closer to finding Claire and uncovering the truth about Sophia. He scanned the room, searching for any sign of Marcus or clues about the underground bunker. His heart pounded as he spotted Victor retreating into a private study, a glass of scotch in hand. Seizing the opportunity, Ethan slipped away from the main hall and followed Victor, closing the heavy wooden door behind him. Victor turned, raising an eyebrow. "Ah, Ethan Carter. To what do I owe this unexpected visit?" Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady despite the rage simmering inside him. "You know exactly why I'm here. Where's Sophia? What did you do to her?" Victor chuckled, feigning innocence. "My dear boy, you're delusional. Your fiancée vanished years ago. Perhaps you should focus on healing rather than chasing ghosts." But when Ethan mentioned the lighthouse recording, Victor's smirk faltered. His eyes narrowed, betraying a flicker of fear. "How did you—" "I know you're involved," Ethan interrupted, his voice low and dangerous. "And I won't stop until I expose you." Victor regained his composure, sneering dismissively. "You have no proof. No one will believe your wild accusations." Ethan locked eyes with him, refusing to back down. "We'll see about that." Though Victor tried to mask it, the brief crack in his facade gave Ethan hope. He was close, closer than ever, to unraveling the truth. Victor leaned back in his chair, studying Ethan with calculated amusement. "You want answers? Fine. Let's talk about Sophia. She's alive, for now. But trust me, you'll never find her in time." Ethan's fists clenched as Victor described her captivity in excruciating detail, relishing Ethan's anguish. "She begs for mercy every day," Victor taunted. "Do you really think you can save her? You're too late." Rage burned hot in Ethan's chest, threatening to consume him. He wanted nothing more than to lash out, to make Victor pay for every tear Sophia had shed. But he forced himself to stay calm, knowing violence would only seal her fate. Instead, he locked eyes with Victor, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "This isn't over." Victor laughed cruelly, swirling his drink. "Oh, Ethan. You're persistent, I'll give you that. But persistence won't save her, or your little reporter friend." The mention of Claire ignited a fresh wave of fury. Ethan took a step closer, his jaw tight. "If anything happens to her, I'll destroy you." Victor shrugged, unconcerned. "Empty threats bore me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have guests to entertain." As Victor brushed past him, Ethan resisted the urge to grab him. Losing control now would ruin everything. Instead, he watched Victor leave, his mind racing. There had to be a way to turn this confrontation to his advantage. He couldn't let Victor win, not after everything he'd taken. Reunited with Claire after rescuing her from Marcus's clutches, Ethan poured out everything he'd learned during his infiltration of Victor's mansion. Together, they sat in Claire's dimly lit apartment, maps and blueprints spread across the table. Every detail mattered. Failure wasn't an option. "We need someone who can hack into Victor's security system," Claire said, tapping a finger on the blueprint of the mansion. "Someone who knows their way around firewalls and encrypted networks." Ethan nodded. "I know just the person." He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Moments later, a familiar voice answered. "Lila Monroe," Ethan said, relief washing over him. Lila was a brilliant hacker and Claire's childhood friend. Though she preferred to stay off the grid, she owed Claire a favor, and Ethan hoped that would be enough to convince her. When Lila arrived, she wasted no time getting to work. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she analyzed Victor's defenses. "This isn't going to be easy," she warned. "His systems are state-of-the-art. One wrong move and we're dead." Despite the risks, Ethan and Claire pressed on. With Lila's expertise, they mapped out Victor's security protocols, identifying weak points and formulating strategies. Every hour brought them closer to locating the underground bunker where Sophia was being held. As they worked tirelessly, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were closer than ever to bringing Sophia home and dismantling Victor's empire once and for all. Late one night, overwhelmed by exhaustion and emotion, Ethan broke down in front of Claire. Tears streamed down his face as he confessed his guilt and self-loathing. "If I hadn't canceled our trip, she'd still be here," he choked out. "This is all my fault." Claire wrapped her arms around him, offering comfort. "Blaming yourself won't bring her back," she said gently. "We're going to get her back, together, no matter what it takes." Her words steadied him, reminding him that he wasn't alone. With Claire by his side, Ethan found strength in vulnerability. Tomorrow, they would face Victor head-on. Tonight, they mourned the pain of the past and steeled themselves for the battle ahead. Using Lila's intel, Ethan and Claire approached Victor's property under the cover of darkness. The mansion loomed ahead, its grandeur masking the horrors hidden beneath. Armed with blueprints and hacking tools, they navigated through dense foliage until they reached the foundation wall. At first glance, it appeared seamless, a solid slab of concrete. But Lila's decryption revealed a reinforced steel door cleverly disguised as part of the structure. Ethan worked quickly, his hands trembling slightly as he entered the code Lila had provided. The door hissed open with a hydraulic groan, revealing a narrow staircase descending into pitch blackness. Claire switched on her flashlight, illuminating the damp, musty air. The walls were lined with exposed pipes, water dripping steadily onto the cold floor. Every step echoed ominously, amplifying their unease. At the bottom, they found themselves in a sprawling underground complex, a labyrinth of corridors and locked rooms. The deeper they ventured, the more horrifying the discoveries became. One room contained rows of filing cabinets filled with documents detailing illegal land deals, bribes, and human trafficking routes. Another held photographs of victims, men, women, and even children, each face marked with fear and despair. Medical equipment stained with dried blood sat in a corner, its purpose chillingly clear. Claire covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. This is monstrous," she whispered, her voice breaking. "How could anyone do this?" Ethan clenched his fists, rage bubbling beneath his grief. These weren't just files or photos, they were lives destroyed by Victor's greed. And Sophia was somewhere in this nightmare. Determination hardened in his chest. They would expose every crime, dismantle this empire, and bring justice to those who suffered. After what felt like hours of navigating the maze-like bunker, Ethan and Claire finally reached a dimly lit corridor lined with cells. Each one was empty except for the last. Inside, huddled against the far wall, was Sophia Bennett. Her once vibrant presence was now reduced to a fragile shell, her hair matted, her clothes tattered, her skin pale and gaunt. But when she lifted her head and saw Ethan, recognition sparked in her weary eyes. "Ethan," she croaked, her voice barely audible. Ethan rushed to the cell, fumbling with the lock until it clicked open. He dropped to his knees, pulling Sophia into his arms. She clung to him weakly, tears streaming down her face. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of 2 years' separation crashing over them in waves of relief and sorrow. "I'm so sorry," Ethan choked out, holding her tighter. "I should have been there. I should have protected you." Sophia shook her head faintly. "You came for me. That's all that matters." As they sat together, Sophia recounted her ordeal. Victor had kidnapped her after discovering she was gathering evidence against him. He'd kept her alive to ensure she couldn't expose his human trafficking ring but subjected her to psychological torture, threatening to kill her if she resisted. Despite everything, Sophia remained resolute. "We can't let him win," she said firmly. "We have to stop him." Her strength gave Ethan renewed purpose. Together, they vowed to take down Victor, not just for themselves, but for everyone he'd harmed. Just as Ethan, Sophia, and Claire prepared to leave the bunker, the sound of heavy boots echoed through the corridor. Before they could react, armed guards flooded the area, their weapons trained on the trio. Victor Langston strode in confidently, his polished suit contrasting sharply with the grimy surroundings. His smug grin sent a chill down Ethan's spine. "Well, well," Victor drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "Look who decided to drop by uninvited. Did you really think you could waltz in here and destroy everything I built?" Ethan stepped protectively in front of Sophia, his jaw tightening. "It's over, Victor. We have all the evidence we need to bring you down." Victor chuckled darkly, unfazed. "Oh, Ethan, you're so naive. Do you honestly believe you're the one holding the cards here?" He gestured to Claire, who stood frozen beside them. "Ask your little reporter friend about her real role in all of this." Ethan turned to Claire, confusion etched across his face. "What's he talking about?" Claire hesitated, her eyes darting between Ethan and Victor. Her hands trembled as she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't have a choice, Ethan. Victor has my younger brother. If I didn't cooperate, he was going to kill him." The words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. Betrayal surged through him, mingling with disbelief and anger. "You've been working for him this whole time? After everything we've been through?" Tears welled up in Claire's eyes as she nodded. "I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't risk it. My brother, he's all I have left." Victor smirked, clearly enjoying the drama unfolding before him. Such touching loyalty, or should I say, desperation? "Now, hand over those files, or your precious Sophia gets another round in the interrogation chair." Ethan's mind raced, searching for a way out. But before he could act, Claire made a decision that would change everything. Without warning, Claire lunged forward, grabbing a nearby guard's weapon. She fired a shot into the ceiling, causing chaos as the guards scrambled for cover. "Go!" she shouted at Ethan and Sophia. "I'll hold them off." Ethan froze, torn between gratitude and devastation. "Claire, no, you can't. There's no time," she snapped, shoving them toward the exit. "Get her out of here. Promise me you'll finish this." Her voice cracked with emotion, but there was steel beneath it, a determination born of guilt and redemption. Ethan hesitated for a moment longer, his heart breaking at the thought of leaving her behind. But Sophia tugged at his arm, her weak voice cutting through his indecision. "We have to go, Ethan. Please." Reluctantly, Ethan pulled Sophia along, glancing back one last time at Claire. She stood defiantly, firing at the guards as they advanced. Her silhouette was illuminated by the dim light, her figure both fragile and fierce. Tears blurred Ethan's vision as they fled, the sound of gunfire echoing behind them. Claire's sacrifice weighed heavily on Ethan's heart. He knew she had made the ultimate choice, not just to save them, but to atone for her betrayal. Her bravery fueled his resolve. No matter what happened next, he wouldn't let her die in vain. They would expose Victor's crimes, dismantle his empire, and ensure justice was served. As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, Ethan replayed Claire's final words in his mind. "Promise me you'll finish this." He clenched his fists, vowing silently to honor her memory. This wasn't just about saving Sophia anymore. It was about taking down the monster who had destroyed so many lives. The bunker began to collapse around them as Victor's men detonated explosives, sealing off evidence of their crimes. The ground shook violently, sending chunks of concrete crashing down from the ceiling. Dust filled the air, making it hard to breathe as Ethan and Sophia sprinted through the collapsing tunnels. "Stay close to me," Ethan shouted over the deafening roar of destruction. He gripped Sophia's hand tightly, guiding her through the chaos. Her legs faltered under her weakened state, but adrenaline kept her moving forward. Behind them, flames erupted from rooms they had just passed, consuming everything in their path. The heat was unbearable, singeing their skin and forcing them to press onward despite the exhaustion threatening to overtake them. At one point, a massive beam collapsed directly in front of them, blocking their way. Ethan quickly scanned the area, spotting an alternate route through a narrow service corridor. "This way," he yelled, pulling Sophia along. They ducked under low-hanging pipes and leaped over debris, their hearts pounding in unison. Every step felt like a miracle, every breath a gift. The thought of Claire sacrificing herself to give them this chance drove Ethan forward, even as his body screamed for rest. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the surface. Bursting into the cold night air, they collapsed onto the damp grass, coughing and gasping for oxygen. Behind them, the bunker imploded in a fiery explosion, sending a shockwave rippling through the ground. Flames shot skyward, illuminating the dark forest like daylight. Sophia clung to Ethan, trembling but alive. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "We made it, we actually made it." Ethan held her close, his own tears mingling with hers. For the first time in 2 years, he allowed himself to believe that they might truly have a future together. But the cost of their escape weighed heavily on him: Claire's sacrifice, the horrors they'd witnessed, and the knowledge that Victor's empire had been built on countless lives. As they watched the inferno consume the bunker, Ethan silently vowed to honor Claire's bravery by ensuring that justice would prevail. In the months following their harrowing escape, Sophia underwent extensive physical and psychological recovery. The trauma of her captivity lingered, manifesting in vivid nightmares and debilitating panic attacks. Some nights, she woke screaming, reliving the moments when Victor's henchmen dragged her into the darkness. Other times, she sat silently, staring out the window as if searching for something she couldn't name. Ethan never left her side. He attended every therapy session, holding her hand as she recounted the horrors she'd endured. Together, they worked through the pain, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been shattered during her absence. Ethan learned to forgive himself for not being there when she needed him most, while Sophia found strength in his unwavering support. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, a testament to their resilience. Though scars remained, both visible and invisible, they began to piece their lives back together. Ethan encouraged Sophia to rediscover the passions she'd once loved, like painting and hiking. Slowly, color returned to her world, replacing the gray haze of captivity. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of their new apartment overlooking Puget Sound, Sophia turned to Ethan with a soft smile. "I never thought I'd feel safe again," she admitted. "But with you, I think I can heal." Ethan kissed her forehead gently. "We'll get through this together. Always." For the first time in years, hope flickered within them, a fragile flame, but one worth protecting. With Claire's evidence and the files recovered from the bunker, authorities launched a sweeping investigation into Victor Langston's criminal empire. The documents exposed a vast network of corruption implicating politicians, law enforcement officials, and business tycoons across the Pacific Northwest. Public outrage erupted as headlines splashed Victor's name across every major news outlet, branding him as one of Seattle's most notorious criminals. Victor himself was presumed dead in the bunker explosion, though his body was never recovered. His legacy, however, lived on in infamy. The public demanded accountability, leading to widespread reforms in law enforcement and government oversight. Task forces were established to dismantle similar operations, ensuring that others like Victor couldn't operate unchecked. For Ethan and Sophia, closure came in knowing that Victor's reign of terror had ended. Though Claire's loss still haunted them, her sacrifice inspired change. Her name was honored posthumously as a hero who risked everything to expose the truth. A memorial fund was created in her memory, supporting victims of human trafficking and advocating for systemic reform. As Ethan stood before a crowd at a vigil honoring Claire, he spoke about her courage and determination. She didn't just fight for justice, she gave her life for it, he said, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. We owe it to her to keep fighting, to ensure that no one else suffers the way she did. The crowd erupted in applause, a bittersweet reminder of the battles won, and those yet to come. One evening, as Ethan sat alone in his apartment, his phone buzzed with an anonymous message. Victor wasn't the only one. Attached was a list of powerful individuals connected to the trafficking ring. Ethan stared at the screen, realization dawning. The conspiracy ran deeper than he imagined. He scrolled through the names, recognizing several high-profile figures, politicians, CEOs, even members of law enforcement. Each name was accompanied by incriminating details, bank transactions, meeting locations, and photographic evidence linking them to Victor's operation. Whoever had sent the message clearly had insider knowledge and wanted Ethan to use it. The shadowy figure behind the messages remained unknown, leaving Ethan questioning whether this battle would ever truly end. Was this person an ally? Or someone playing a dangerous game of their own? One thing was certain, the fight against corruption was far from over. Ethan glanced at Sophia, asleep in the next room. She had come so far, but the scars of her ordeal would always remind him of the stakes. If these individuals weren't brought to justice, more lives would be destroyed. He clenched his fists, resolve hardening in his chest. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about protecting the innocent. And Ethan wouldn't stop until every last perpetrator was exposed. Ethan sat hunched over his laptop late one night, the glow of the screen casting eerie shadows across his face. The anonymous message had sent him spiraling into a frenzy of investigation. Using Lila's old hacking tools, he traced the source of the transmission to an encrypted server located somewhere in Eastern Europe, a digital labyrinth designed to obscure its users' identities. Every keystroke felt like a step closer to uncovering the truth, but also deeper into danger. As he delved further, another message popped up on his screen, stark and chilling. Stop digging, or you'll lose her again. The words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. His breath hitched as panic surged through him. Lose her again. The phrase echoed in his mind, conjuring images of Sophia being dragged away, her terrified eyes pleading for help. He glanced toward the bedroom where she slept soundly, oblivious to the fresh threat looming over them. For hours, Ethan wrestled with indecision. Continuing meant risking everything they'd fought so hard to rebuild. But stepping back felt like surrender, a betrayal of Claire's sacrifice and the countless victims who deserved justice. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, suffocating yet unyielding. By morning, dark circles ringed his eyes, but his resolve hardened. He couldn't stop, not entirely. If there was even a sliver of hope to dismantle this conspiracy, he owed it to those who suffered to try. But he would tread carefully, prioritizing Sophia's safety above all else. For now, he erased his browsing history, shut down the laptop, and resolved to find answers without drawing attention. The game wasn't over, it had just become infinitely more dangerous. Weeks later, Ethan surprised Sophia with a small sapling wrapped in burlap, a cherry blossom tree destined to grow in their backyard. She stared at it quizzically, her brow furrowing. "What's this for?" she asked softly. "It's for us," Ethan replied, kneeling beside her. "A reminder of how far we've come and how much we've overcome together." They planted the tree near the edge of their property, close enough to see from their living room window but far enough to give it space to flourish. As they worked side by side, shoveling soil and patting it gently around the roots, Sophia smiled faintly. "Cherry blossoms are beautiful," she murmured. "But they're fragile too." "That's why I chose it," Ethan said, brushing dirt off his hands. "Because resilience isn't about never breaking, it's about growing stronger after you do." Every spring, as promised, the tree bloomed into a riot of pink petals, symbolizing renewal and hope. On sunny days, they sat beneath its branches, sharing quiet moments that spoke louder than words. It became a sanctuary, a physical representation of their journey from darkness to light. To Sophia, the tree was more than just a plant. It was proof that life could bloom even in the harshest conditions. And to Ethan, it was a vow, a promise to protect what they'd built, no matter the cost. One rainy afternoon, Sophia sat curled up on the couch, staring out the window as droplets streaked the glass. Her gaze was distant, lost in memories she rarely spoke of. Sensing her mood, Ethan joined her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" he asked gently. Sophia hesitated before nodding. "I was thinking about everything. About what happened in that bunker. How scared I was, how close I came to giving up." Her voice trembled, but she continued, determined to articulate the thoughts swirling in her mind. "But then I remembered something. I remembered you. Even when I didn't know if you were looking for me, I held on to the idea that you wouldn't stop until you found me. That belief kept me going." Tears welled in her eyes as she turned to face him. "Thank you, Ethan, for never giving up on me. For fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself." Ethan pulled her into a tight embrace, overwhelmed by emotion. "You're the strongest person I know," he whispered. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel that kind of fear again." Their bond deepened with each passing day, forged not just by love but by shared trauma and survival. Together, they navigated life after the storm, finding strength in vulnerability and solace in each other's presence. Months passed, and Ethan's investigation stalled. Frustrated but unwilling to abandon the cause, he revisited old leads, searching for anything he might have missed. One evening, while combing through encrypted files, he stumbled upon a familiar name buried deep within the data: Marcus Kane. Before Ethan could process the discovery, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. The number was blocked, but curiosity compelled him to answer. A distorted voice greeted him. "Surprised to hear from me, Ethan?" Recognition dawned immediately. "Marcus? You're supposed to be dead." Marcus chuckled darkly. "Faking my death was easier than you'd think, and necessary. Victor's network runs deeper than anyone realizes. If I hadn't disappeared, I'd be 6 feet under right now." Ethan clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Why contact me now? What do you want?" "I have information," Marcus replied smoothly. "Enough to expose the remaining members of the trafficking ring. But I can't do it alone, and neither can you. We need to work together." Though tempted to hang up, Ethan knew Marcus might hold the key to finishing what they'd started. Still, trust was a luxury he couldn't afford, not with someone who'd betrayed him once before. During their next conversation, Marcus dropped another bombshell. Claire survived the explosion, he revealed casually as though discussing the weather. She's been in hiding ever since, fearing retaliation from those higher up in the conspiracy. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Is she okay?" "She's alive," Marcus confirmed. "But she won't stay that way unless we act fast. I can reunite you with her, but only if you agree to cooperate fully." The offer tore at Ethan's conscience. Reuniting with Claire would mean closure for both of them, but trusting Marcus again felt like walking into a trap. Yet, abandoning the opportunity to save her seemed unthinkable. "What's your price?" Ethan demanded, suspicion lacing his tone. "No price," Marcus replied cryptically. "Just your word that you'll follow through. This goes beyond revenge, it's about dismantling the entire operation." Ethan ended the call, his mind racing. Could he trust Marcus? Or was this another manipulation? Either way, the stakes had never been higher. Days turned into weeks as Ethan grappled with his decision. Sophia noticed the tension brewing between them and confronted him one evening. "You're pulling away," she said quietly. "What's going on?" Ethan hesitated before confessing everything: Marcus's reappearance, Claire's survival, and the ultimatum he faced. "If I don't act, we risk losing everything we've worked for," he explained. "But if I do, I might put you in danger." Sophia's expression softened, though concern lingered in her eyes. "Ethan, I understand why you feel responsible. But our safety matters too. Please don't let revenge consume you." Her words struck a chord, forcing Ethan to confront the moral dilemma head-on. Was justice worth sacrificing their future? Or was there a middle ground, a way to honor Claire's sacrifice without jeopardizing Sophia's well-being? After sleepless nights and endless deliberation, Ethan reached a conclusion. He contacted Marcus, setting clear boundaries. "We work together, but on my terms," he stated firmly. "No compromises, no unnecessary risks. And if I sense even a hint of betrayal, our partnership ends." Marcus agreed reluctantly, sensing Ethan's resolve. Together, they began gathering evidence against the remaining perpetrators, piecing together a web of corruption that stretched farther than either had imagined. Each revelation brought them closer to the truth, but also closer to danger. Ethan knew the road ahead would be treacherous, but he refused to falter. With Sophia's support and Claire's memory driving him forward, he prepared for the final confrontation. The climax unfolded in a dimly lit parking garage beneath Capitol Hill. Ethan stood facing a corrupt senator implicated in the trafficking ring, his gun drawn. Tension crackled in the air as the senator smirked, confident in his immunity. "You think taking me down will change anything?" the senator sneered. "There will always be others willing to take my place."